Summer 7 is right around the corner, and all of the servants that we're going to be getting, including the 4 stars, are some absolute bangers. Some of the best servants we're going to be getting this year, with the exception of one servant in particular, that being Saber Gareth, which got me thinking because there is a lot of discussion around this servant because she really is the black sheep of all the banners, where she's not just not available to use in the Buster meta right now, but she's just not a good servant in general. And it got me thinking, does Lasengel or even Aniplex make some of these quote-unquote bad servants on purpose? And I wanted to talk about that in this video. And before we do start getting into this proper, I know that servants some people like are probably going to get mentioned in this video. It's not a personal attack on you. If anything, I feel bad for people that like some of these servants that aren't particularly good or that are more forgotten. Because realistically, FGO and the Fate IP as a whole is one of those properties where every servant is probably somebody's favorite character. I mean, you may not think that, but one of my best friends has Spartacus as his favorite character, right? The whole reason he even tried to play FGO in the first place was because I told him that Spartacus was a free-to-play that you could get on the friend point gacha. You would have to invest no money into the game. And so every servant has somebody that is their biggest fan. And so when you release a servant that's an absolute flop, my heart breaks for those people because I can't imagine not being able to use somebody like Gilgamesh or Draco or Morgan, whoever it is that you really like, because they happen to be really bad. But oh wait, I kinda can relate because Arthur and Sigurd are some of my favorite characters and they are notoriously bad. Iskandar is beloved by everybody and he's not even remotely good. I mean, the best use case for somebody like Iskandar is that maybe you're doing a multi-core setup, right? You have a way to get Iskandar an additional maybe 30 to 50% charge because event CEs usually have their own starting 50% gauge, and you could append skill him to make him start with 70%. That's only like a Castoria charisma if you want to have him on the side. Maybe he can take out a wave of enemies because he does do really good NP damage, but that really sucks, man. The guy who pretty much steals the show for Fate Zero and has arguably the best master servant pairing of all time is regulated to like, sometimes you can take out a wave of jobbers. It's really sad. Or the case of Sigurd being the king of warriors, pretty much the linchpin of Lost Belt 2. He's like the main villain guy that we have to be afraid of the entire time. Then we get him on our side and we just clock Surtur in the jaw and take him out. Or Arthur, the normal servant that is doing the job of grand servants. You know, he's chasing down beasts. These guys are sick and they suck donkey balls. They are not good at all whatsoever. Maybe Sigurd, you can make the argument that, well, he does chunk enemies for big damage and he can take out dragons. But then my boy Arthur is sitting over there with the super large power mod that is more useless than a screen door on a submarine. It's absolutely baffling how this does absolutely nothing for him. They could have just given him like a 200% power mod against specifically beast enemies, and that would be more useful. At least there's some boss fights that you can get some mileage out on that on, and it's still pretty lore accurate. But why are these servants not good? Because it's not just, oh, well, a lot of my favorite servants are good. No, a lot of the guys that I like also suck, and trying to make them work is very painful. And then you look at somebody like Gareth, who is the black sheep of an upcoming string of banners that are the most powerful banners that we are going to see this year, and she sticks out like a sore thumb. You have Lady Avalon, who is basically giving Arts access to the power of Merlin. Summer Ibuki, who is arguably still the best Arts AoE unit in the game right now. She's pretty good. Quick goddess herself, Ruler Scotty, who is revolutionizing Quick and bringing it up from the ashes and saving it and bringing it not just to playability, but back into the meta standard by allowing them to use Black Grail. Then you have Summer Eris, who is on Ibuki's banner, who is one of the best single target arts units in the game. I mean, she's an Avenger, so she hits hard, and having servant power mod, I mean, that's probably pretty good. You know, just every single servant in the game. Sure, it's not the 150% weak to Enema Elish thing that we have, but still, a power mod against pretty much everybody is still a power mod against pretty much everybody that also has an additional power mod that you can just slap a debuff on somebody and get that one as well. So 2 power mods that are basically free. And then Summer Wu, I feel like also people try to put her in the same category as Gareth, but she's a pseudo support that revolves around undead. But here's the thing, she makes all the enemies undead, so you might as well just count all of those buffs for free. She basically gives everybody a power mod and a slew of very powerful buffs. And then there's Gareth, who gets barred from entry into the Buster meta because for whatever reason they said, no, we're not going to give her a 30% battery. Even if you wanted to go for NP5 so she could do some decent damage, nah, you still can't use her on that, right? But then they decided to give her all these stars because, you know what, maybe she could be a decent crit servant. And that's what I thought they were going to go with her when I first saw her details, because she not only bombs stars on her first skill, but she regen stars on her second skill. So she's a Buster servant that does a really good job at maintaining stars. But then for some reason just did not give her a crit buff at all. They said, hey, you're gonna have Merlin, right? Use your Merlin with your Gareth to get the crit damage. What if you don't have Merlin, Lasengle? What if you don't have this limited servant? That I get it, they're both part of the Arthurian legend, right? It's cute that you can use them together, but you could at least give Gareth, I don't know, a 30% crit damage buff. You could give her something like the OG Canis, who, like Gareth, is kicked out of the Buster meta because she doesn't have the proper battery, which is something that I dislike about the Buster meta that'll probably come out in a different video. But even though she's barred from entry, at least Canis can do some pretty nasty crits. At least she's stacking crit damage so she can just annihilate people with those. And it can't be something as simple, though, as maybe they don't have guys that are testing the units, because they have to have guys that test the units. That's how they knew that Scotty would be as good as she was when she released. She was intended to make quick units loop until you could do 3-turn farming very easily. Same thing for Castoria. She is extremely overtuned to the point that a year 5 servant going into year 9 is still demonstrably the best unit in the game, and it's really not even close with anybody else, because not one single unit does everything that she does. But then they also got to know how the battery system works, you know, making pretty much every 50% battery have a 6-turn cooldown and how that interacts with Koyanskaya, and that's why it's so good. So they clearly know how their own mechanics work, and they know how to make good servants. I mean, the most recent Count of Monte Cristo that we got, or even going a couple months back, the Ruler Kagetora that we got, they're bonkers units. They're insanely good. Draco is redonkulously good, pretty much just based on her classing alone, but then you just built a very nice, insane kit around that, and she's solid. Tiamat is very nasty in and of herself as well. She can do Black Grail farming as well. So then it always begs the question, why do we get just mid or bad servants? You know, it's fine. Not every servant has to be an absolute banger, but can they at least be viable? Can they at least be someone that I don't feel bad using? Because if you're a fan of Gareth, I'm sure you'll still use the summer version. She's got some cute outfits and whatnot, but you don't feel good about it. When you're smacking the enemy for like a 20k damage NP, maybe if you're fighting like Lancers, you get like 40k or something like that, it doesn't feel good. I can't imagine that's a good feeling to be doing potato damage and then not even having crits to back it up. You could make the argument of, well, they don't want to increase, you know, the power level of the game, but that's not even what we're saying. We're more talking about the flooring of the game, you know, how strong a lot of the weaker units are. I think that is the issue, because sure, don't make busted servants all the time, because I don't want to deal with people on Sir Nunos's level every other event. Okay, let's not increase the power difficulty or anything, but if you don't want a servant to be particularly broken, you could at least throw them a bone. You don't have to give them a massive battery or an insane power mod or anything, but for someone like Gareth, I'd almost rather you just got rid of the 20% battery and fleshed out her crit niche a little bit more, or maybe gave her something to do with the burn damage she's able to do, because that's kind of just chalked on there randomly. I get it, haha, goofy lore, she's Gawain's, you know, sibling, you know, Gawain is the Sun Fire Knight guy, so let's give her some burn damage. But there's really nothing for her to do with that. There's no way for her to capitalize on that. You could even make them more of a gimmick servant, right? I think that's also fine. I mean, look at somebody like Locusta. Locusta is definitely a major gimmick servant, but hey, when you can set up her gimmick or you're fighting guys that want to poison her, it is an absolute blast to see her heal for like tens of thousands of damage because the enemy is trying to demerit her, but she's like, nah, I love the mushrooms, give me those poison buffs. I think that's also fine, doing stuff along those lines where you're not breaking out Locusta for every fight, but you're like, oh, this is a fight I can use Locusta on. You get really excited that they have their gimmick, but these servants that are in this kind of Summer Gareth pile, they just don't really have a purpose to be used. Or again, like someone that I really like, Arthur. You know, Arthur's a servant that I have just sitting in my Chaldea. I try to break him out every now and then, at least unlike Gareth. He has the crit damage buff to make up for his potato NP, but it still doesn't feel good when I want to bring out one of my favorite servants and be like, all right, we're gonna go fight this major boss. And then it takes me a billion turns to get through. And then is it really Arthur getting through that fight? Or is that Merlin and Castoria kind of dragging his corpse across the finish line? But I just wanted to pose this question and kind of vent some of this stuff off my chest itself, because it's just one of those things that as I'm looking at the banners coming up, I know I'm going to make a video talking about Summer Gareth proper and trying to facilitate some things with her and trying to make her look good. But it was just one of those things that I was wondering, and I just want to see if anybody else in the community has a similar take. If they are intentionally just making some of these servants bad or very, very lackluster, and if you think maybe there's like a lore reason for that. Because sure, someone like Astolfo or Angra, mind you, not being particularly strong servants, I could see that from a lore perspective, right? Angra, mind you, and Astolfo both say, hey, we're not very strong, you know, don't even bother putting us on the front line. So I'm like, you know what? Angra, mind you, being the worst servant in the game, I think that is perfectly fine. Especially because he's a free unit. Astolfo, I mean, that guy's got some good NPs. Maybe we could give him some kind of gimmick, but this isn't a trading card game, right? It's not like Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering or Pokemon, right? The card games that have those bulk cards out there, because not every card can be a banger. You need some fluff out there to fill out the packs. We don't really need that in something like this. You don't really need bad units floating around, especially if they're higher rarity. I could see the argument for low rarity units. You know, you'll leave them being not as broken. Look at somebody like Fergus's buff that he just recently got for the 7th anniversary. Not the craziest thing, but it's a little bit of fluff in the lower rarities for newer players to use until they can get something better. I get that. I don't really get the gold rarity servants just kind of being mediocre on release. I had the same reaction to Takeda Shingen when he released, despite him being really sick. Not gonna spoil the event or anything. I love the dude. He's super sick. He looks super sick as well, but I don't know why they made his kit kinda lackluster, especially when he's supposed to be the rival for Kagetora, and Kagetora is like infinitely better than he is. I don't know, some things just don't add up and just seem very strange to me. But let me know if I'm not the only one that have noticed these little discrepancies or have wondered this question before, because honestly, I don't have an answer for you guys. It's just a discussion video where I'm pondering a question that's been really bothering me. I mean, yeah, I scripted a couple of bullet points to go over, but at the very end of my notes here, I have, all right, conclusion, give them an answer. And I don't really have an answer. I don't know why they would make really bad units at the higher rarity level. It's just very bizarre. But with that being said, if you enjoy random FGO discussion videos like this, I do this all the time, especially while we're waiting for stuff to come out or if we're in particularly dry period. So if you enjoy having something Fate related show up in your feed every single day, then make sure you hit that like button, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel, as I do put these videos out every single day. And if you want to watch me play FGO live, I do that every weekday now over on my Twitch. We're trying to get back to streaming every single weekday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, although I'm also sprinkling a little bit of Elden Ring in there. In fact, yesterday we did a particularly long Elden Ring stream because I'm trying to get ready for the DLC. I didn't want to go in with my New Game +3 character and just get absolutely pancaked. The bosses, I've heard, are already hard enough as is. I don't need to be going in there with New Game +3 stats. So we're starting a new account, running in there, and we're going to go see how that goes. So if that also tickles your pickle, then also make sure you give the Twitch a follow and, I don't know, maybe join the Discord. The Patreon is also going to be getting some FGO discussion content that I'm going to post exclusively over there. So if you just want more stuff coming your way, then there's also the Patreon in the description. But with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.